The night my wife chose a billionaire over me. The divorce papers were already signed when my wife looked into my eyes and said the words that destroyed 7 years of my life. Ethan, I'm sorry, but I can't spend the rest of my life pretending love is enough. I stood across from Victoria Carter inside the private dining room of the Blackwood Tower, the tallest building in New York City, the same building that carried the name of the man standing beside my wife, Adrian Blackwood, the billionaire everyone knew, the man who owned technology companies, luxury brands, private jets, and half the financial world, the man my wife had chosen over me. Victoria held Adrian's arm like she belonged there, and Adrian looked at me with a smile that said he had already won. But there was one thing neither of them knew. The empire Adrian Blackwood was standing inside, the empire everyone believed belonged to him, was actually mine. Ethan, say something, Victoria whispered. I looked at the woman I once planned to grow old with, the woman whose hand I held when she had nothing, the woman who cried in my arms when nobody believed in her dreams. And now she was standing beside another man, wearing a diamond necklace, worth more than the house we once dreamed about buying. What do you want me to say, Victoria? My voice was calm, too calm, because sometimes the deepest pain doesn't come with tears. Sometimes it comes with silence. Victoria looked away. I wanted you to understand. Understand what? That people change. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. People change? I repeated, yes. She took a breath. Ethan, when we met, I loved your kindness. I loved how you cared about me. But eventually I realized kindness doesn't build an empire. Adrian smiled. You can't blame Victoria for wanting a better future. I turned toward him. For years, I had heard his name in business magazines. Adrian Blackwood, the genius billionaire, the self-made king. But the truth was something nobody knew. Adrian wasn't the creator of Blackwood Global. He was only the face. The man investors trusted. The man cameras followed. The man who received awards. But behind every decision, every acquisition, every billion-dollar deal, there was a silent owner. Me, Ethan Carter. I built Blackwood Global from nothing. Not because I wanted fame. Not because I wanted power. But because I promised my father before he died that I would protect what he started. 10 years ago, when my father passed away, he left me a small technology company struggling with debt. I spent years rebuilding it. I created partnerships. I developed strategies. I turned a dying company into a global empire. But I never wanted the world to know my name. I believed real power didn't need attention. So I created a trust. I placed Adrian Blackwood as the public CEO. The world saw Adrian. Nobody saw me. Even my wife. Especially my wife. Ethan, Victoria said softly, I know this hurts. I looked at her. Do you? She became uncomfortable. Yes. No, Victoria. You know that I'm leaving. You don't know what it feels like to watch someone you trusted replace you like you were nothing. Her eyes moved toward Adrian. That small movement told me everything. She had already chosen. You never understood me, she said. I lowered my eyes. Maybe I didn't. The truth was painful, because I spent years understanding everyone except myself. I understood Victoria's dreams, her fears, her ambitions. I supported her when she wanted to become a fashion designer. I paid for her first studio. I encouraged her when nobody believed in her. But somewhere along the way, Victoria stopped seeing me as her husband. She started seeing me as the man standing in her way. Adrian stepped closer. Ethan, I actually wanted to handle this respectfully. I looked at him. Respectfully? Yes. He adjusted his expensive watch. You and Victoria are clearly no longer compatible. I smiled slightly. No longer compatible? That's right. Interesting. What? I just find it interesting how people use expensive words to hide simple truths. Adrian frowned. What truth? That you didn't win her heart. I looked at Victoria. You won when she started believing your money mattered more than my loyalty. Victoria's face changed. For a moment, I saw guilt. Real guilt. But Adrian interrupted. Enough. His voice became colder. Victoria made her choice. I nodded. Yes, she did. I picked up the divorce papers. My hands didn't shake. My heart did. But nobody saw that. I hope you're happy. Victoria looked surprised. That's it. What did you expect? I thought you would fight. I looked at her. Fight for what? She stayed silent. For someone who already decided I wasn't enough, nobody answered, because there was nothing to say. I walked out of Blackwood Tower that night. The rain was falling heavily. New York was glowing around me. Millions of people walking through the city. Millions of stories. Millions of broken hearts. But nobody knew the man walking alone in the rain owned the building behind him. Nobody knew the billionaire everyone admired was working for him. Nobody knew the woman who left him had just abandoned the future she could have shared. I entered my car. My assistant, Daniel Brooks, was waiting. Daniel had worked beside me for 8 years. He looked at my face. He already knew. Mr. Carter. I looked through the window. Don't. Daniel stopped. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. Daniel, tomorrow morning, schedule a board meeting. Daniel looked confused. A board meeting? Yes. About what? I opened my eyes. For the first time that night, my pain turned into something else. Determination. It's time Adrian remembers who built his empire. Daniel became silent. Then he asked a question I knew was coming. Are you finally going to reveal yourself? I looked back at Blackwood Tower, the place where my wife chose another man, the place where my greatest secret had been hidden for years. No. Daniel looked surprised. Then what are you going to do? I smiled slightly. I'm going to let them believe they won. A pause. Because the hardest lesson people learn, I looked at the city lights, is realizing they destroyed the one person who was protecting them. The next morning, Adrian Blackwood walked into the boardroom expecting congratulations. He expected investors to celebrate his success. He expected the world to continue believing his story. But when the doors opened, he saw me sitting at the head of the table. For the first time in years, Adrian looked afraid. Ethan? I placed a folder on the table. Good morning, Adrian. His face turned pale. What are you doing here? I leaned back, taking back what was always mine. Adrian slowly opened the folder, and when he saw the documents inside, the confidence disappeared from his face. Because the first page contained one name, the name of the real owner of Blackwood Global. My name, Ethan Carter. And that was the moment Adrian realized the man his wife left behind was the man who controlled his entire world. Adrian Blackwood stared at the documents in front of him like the words on the page had somehow changed. But they hadn't. The truth had been there for years, hidden in legal agreements, buried under layers of corporate structures, protected by the one thing Adrian never thought I had. Patience. You're lying. Adrian's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. I looked at him from across the boardroom table, a room where Adrian had spent years acting like a king, a room where executives stood when he entered, a room where everyone believed his decisions controlled the future of Blackwood Global. But today, the man sitting at the head of the table wasn't Adrian. It was me. Do you really think I would walk into this room and risk everything with fake documents? Adrian picked up the papers again. His hands tightened. This doesn't make sense. What doesn't make sense? You were nobody. The room became silent. I looked at Adrian, not with anger, not with hatred, with disappointment, because that sentence revealed everything. After all these years, Adrian never respected me. He only respected the image I created. I was nobody. I asked. Adrian looked away. You lived a normal life. You never appeared at company events. You never gave interviews. You never met investors. I nodded. That was the point. He laughed nervously. So you expect me to believe that the quiet man everyone ignored was secretly controlling the largest technology empire in the country? Yes. Adrian stared at me. Then he smiled. A desperate smile. You know what your problem is, Ethan? I said nothing. You think money gives you power. I leaned forward. No, Adrian. I tapped the folder. Money never gave me power. A pause. Discipline did. 8 years earlier, when Adrian first entered my life, he wasn't a billionaire. He was a talented businessman with ambition, a man who knew how to speak, how to impress people, how to convince investors. But he lacked one thing: trust. My father always told me, an empire isn't built by the person standing on the stage. It's built by the person making the right decisions when nobody is watching. That was why I chose Adrian. He had confidence, charisma, the ability to represent the company. I had the ability to build it. Together, we created something powerful. But somewhere along the way, Adrian forgot he was representing something. He started believing he owned it. Ethan, Daniel's voice interrupted my thoughts. He was standing beside the presentation screen. Should I continue? I nodded. Show them. Daniel pressed a button. The screen changed. A timeline appeared. Every major achievement of Blackwood Global. Every acquisition. Every billion-dollar contract. Every innovation. And beside each achievement, my approval signature. The room became uncomfortable. Executives looked at Adrian, then at me. One of the board members, Richard Hayes, slowly stood. Mr. Carter, he looked nervous. Is this true? I looked at him. Yes. Richard swallowed. You were the majority owner all this time? Yes. And Adrian knew? I looked toward Adrian. That question hurt more than anything, because the answer was complicated. He knew enough. Adrian immediately reacted. That's not fair. I turned toward him. Not fair? Yes. His voice became emotional. You gave me responsibility. I gave you an opportunity. I built this company. The room became silent. I studied his face. For a moment, I saw the younger Adrian, the man who once sat in a small office dreaming about success, the man who wanted to prove himself. And I realized something. Adrian wasn't just greedy. He was insecure. He spent years living in someone else's shadow. My shadow. But instead of accepting that, he tried to erase me. You wanted the world to believe you created everything. I said. Adrian looked away. Because nobody would respect me otherwise. The confession surprised everyone. Even me. For the first time, Adrian wasn't acting like a billionaire. He was acting like a wounded man. I spent my entire life being overlooked, Adrian continued. My father called me a failure. My family compared me to successful people. Nobody believed I could become someone. He looked at me, and when I finally became someone, his eyes hardened. I couldn't go back to being invisible. I understood, but understanding someone's pain doesn't excuse their choices. Later that afternoon, I returned home, or what used to be my home. The house felt different. Empty, cold. Every room carried memories. The kitchen where Victoria and I cooked together. The living room where we watched movies. The balcony where we promised we would grow old together. I walked toward our bedroom. Half of Victoria's things were gone. Her perfume, her clothes, her photographs. Everything that proved she had been there. Everything except one thing. A small wooden box on the shelf. I opened it. Inside was an old photograph. Victoria and I on our first vacation. She was laughing. I was holding her hand. Behind the picture was a handwritten note. I recognized her handwriting immediately. For Ethan, the man who believed in me before anyone else did. I stared at the words. A painful question entered my mind. When did that woman disappear? When did the person who wrote this become someone who could leave me for money? My phone rang. It was Victoria. I looked at the screen for several seconds. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part wanted answers. I answered. Hello. Silence. Then her voice. Ethan. I closed my eyes. Victoria. I heard about the board meeting. News travels fast. You exposed Adrian. No. My voice became colder. I revealed the truth. She sighed. Why are you doing this? I almost laughed. Why am I doing this? Yes. Victoria, Adrian took credit for my work. He lied to everyone. Why wouldn't I expose him? Because you're destroying everything. I became quiet. Everything. Yes. Her voice became emotional. You don't understand what you're doing. I looked around the empty house. No, Victoria. I understand perfectly. You're angry? Yes. But this isn't you. I paused, because she was right. Revenge was never who I was. But neither was being betrayed. Victoria. Yes. Did you know? Silence. Know what? Did you know Adrian was using my company? Another silence. A longer one. That silence answered everything. My heart sank. Victoria, I was going to tell you. When? She didn't answer. When Victoria? Her voice became smaller. When everything was finalized, I felt something break inside me. Not because she left. I had accepted that. but because she knew. She knew the man she chose was taking everything I built, and she still stayed. You didn't leave me for Adrian. My voice became quiet. You left me because you thought Adrian's world was better than mine. Ethan? No. I ended the call. That night, I received an unexpected message from an unknown number. One sentence. You think Adrian Blackwood is your biggest problem. You're wrong. I stared at the message. Another message appeared. Your wife knows the truth about your past. My expression changed. My past? Nobody knew about my past. Nobody knew about the years before Blackwood Global. Nobody knew about my father's final secret. Nobody knew about the promise I made before inheriting the company. I typed back, "Who are you?" The reply came instantly. "Someone who knows why your father really died." I froze. My father, the one subject I never allowed anyone to discuss. Because everyone believed my father died in an accident, but I always had doubts. And now someone was claiming they knew the truth. A truth hidden for over a decade. I looked at the message again. Then another message arrived. "If you want answers, meet me tomorrow." Alone. I stared into the darkness. Because suddenly, my wife's betrayal wasn't the biggest secret in my life anymore. Something much bigger was coming. And it was connected to the empire I thought I had already protected. The fall of the man who owned everything. The next morning, I arrived at the abandoned warehouse on the edge of Brooklyn, with one thought repeating in my mind. Who knew about my father? For years, I had convinced myself that my father's death was something I had to accept. An accident, a tragic moment, a painful memory. But deep inside, I always felt something was wrong. My father, Michael Carter, was not a careless man. He checked everything twice. Every contract, every investment, every decision. A man like my father didn't simply disappear from the road one night. And now someone was telling me there was a reason. I stepped inside the old warehouse. Dust covered the floor. Broken windows allowed small rays of sunlight to enter. "Ethan Carter." A voice came from the darkness. I turned. An older man walked forward. Gray hair, tired eyes, a face I had never forgotten. Thomas. Thomas Reed, my father's former business partner. The man everyone believed disappeared after my father's death. "What are you doing here?" I asked. Thomas looked at me with sadness. "I should have come to you years ago." I stayed silent. "Then why didn't you?" His eyes lowered. "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Thomas looked around. "People were more powerful than your father." My expression changed. "What does that mean?" Thomas took a deep breath. "Your father didn't die because of an accident." The words hit harder than I expected. I felt my chest tighten. "Explain." Thomas walked closer. "Your father discovered someone inside the company was stealing from him." "Who?" Thomas hesitated, then said the name, Adrian Blackwood. I froze. "No." Thomas looked at me. "You trusted him?" "Yes." "Your father did too." My jaw tightened. "But Adrian was just a young businessman back then." "Exactly." Tomesite. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't rich. But he was ambitious. I remembered the younger Adrian. The man who always talked about changing his life. The man who wanted respect. "He didn't kill your father," Thomas continued. I looked at him. "Then who did?" Thomas handed me a small envelope. "This." I opened it. Inside was an old photograph. My father, Adrian, and another man I didn't recognize. "What is this?" "Your father discovered they were working together." "Who was the other man?" Thomas looked at me. "Victor Blackwood." My eyes narrowed. "Adrian's father?" Thomas nodded. The room became silent. "Your father was planning to expose them." I looked at the photograph. "Why didn't you tell me?" Thomas looked away. "Because after your father died, they controlled everything." "What about me?" "You were young, angry, vulnerable." He paused. "And they knew the only way to stop your father's son from looking deeper was to make sure you stayed distracted." A cold feeling moved through me. Distracted? Thomas looked at me. "They knew you would focus on rebuilding the company. They knew you would spend years protecting your father's dream." I stared at him, and they were right. When I returned to my office, Daniel immediately noticed something was wrong. "You found something." I placed the photograph on the desk. Daniel picked it up. His face changed. "Is that?" "Yes." Adrian. I nodded. Daniel looked confused. Mr. Carter, what does this mean? It means Blackwood Global wasn't built on betrayal. I looked at the picture. It was built on a betrayal that started before I was even ready to fight. Daniel became serious. What are you going to do? I didn't answer immediately, because for the first time, I wasn't fighting only for myself. I was fighting for my father. But before I could make my next move, my entire world collapsed. At 9 a.m. the next morning, every major news channel reported the same story. Ethan Carter accused of corporate fraud and illegal control of Blackwood Global. I stared at the television. Impossible. The news showed documents. Fake documents. They claimed I secretly manipulated company funds. They claimed I had hidden ownership to avoid regulations. They claimed I was a villain. Daniel rushed into my office. Ethan! I turned. What happened? The board received a lawsuit. From who? Daniel hesitated. Adrian. Of course. I smiled, not because it was funny, because I finally understood. Adrian couldn't defeat me legally, so he changed the story. He made himself the victim, and me the criminal. Hours later, I entered the emergency board meeting, the same room where I had revealed my identity. But this time, everyone looked at me differently. Suspicious. Afraid. Richard Hayes stood. Mr. Carter, these accusations are serious. I looked around. A week ago, these people respected me. Today, they questioned me. Do you believe them? Richard avoided my eyes. That hurt more than I expected, because loyalty disappears quickly when people become afraid. Then Adrian entered. The room became silent. He walked confidently, like nothing had happened. Ethan. I looked at him. Adrian. He smiled. I never wanted things to become like this. I almost laughed. You filed a lawsuit against me. I had no choice. No choice. He sat down. You forced me. I studied him. You're scared. His smile disappeared. I'm protecting the company. No. I leaned forward. You're protecting yourself. Adrian became angry. You think you're untouchable because you secretly own everything? The room became silent. I built relationships. I built trust. I built this company's reputation. I looked at him, and I built the company you're standing in. His face tightened. Then Adrian said something I never expected. Something that changed everything. You still don't understand, Ethan. I frowned. What? Adrian smiled. You think you know the whole story about your father. My heart stopped. What did you say? Adrian stood. Your father wasn't betrayed by me. Silence. Your father was betrayed by someone much closer. I felt my stomach tighten. Who? Adrian looked directly at me. Someone you married. The room went completely silent. I stared at him. Victoria. Adrian didn't answer. He didn't need to, because the look in his eyes told me everything. My wife, the woman who left me for him, the woman I thought was simply chasing money, may have been hiding something much darker. That night, I returned home. But this time, I wasn't looking for memories. I was looking for evidence. I opened Victoria's old desk. I searched through documents. Nothing. Then I noticed something strange. A hidden compartment. Inside was a small black notebook. My hands froze, because on the first page was my father's handwriting. I opened it. The first sentence made my blood run cold. If you are reading this, it means I was right not to trust everyone around me. I turned the page, and the next words destroyed everything I believed. Ethan, the person who will hurt you most will not be your enemy. I stopped breathing, because underneath that sentence was a name I never expected. Victoria Carter. The secret my wife hid from me. I stared at the name written on my father's old notebook. Victoria Carter. For several minutes, I couldn't move. My mind refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. The woman I loved, the woman I defended, the woman I believed simply fell for someone richer, was connected to the biggest secret of my life. I closed the notebook, then opened again. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on me. Maybe pain was making me see things that weren't real. But the handwriting was unmistakable. My father's handwriting. The same handwriting that filled my childhood with business lessons, advice, and promises. I whispered, "Why, Dad?" My voice disappeared into the empty room. "Why did you know about Victoria?" The next morning, I called Daniel. Find everything about Victoria Carter. There was a pause. Daniel knew that name was painful for me. Ethan, everything Daniel. My voice was calm. But be careful. Why? Because I don't know if I'm searching for answers. I looked at the notebook. Or another reason to lose trust in people. Daniel became quiet. I'll handle it. 3 hours later, Daniel walked into my office. He placed a folder on my desk. I found something. I opened it. Inside were documents, old records, financial transactions, emails. I read the first page, then the second, then the third, and every page made the truth darker. Victoria wasn't who I thought she was. Before she met me, she worked for Blackwood Global, not as an employee, as a consultant, working directly under Adrian Blackwood. My hands tightened around the paper. She knew him before me? Daniel nodded. Yes. How long? Almost a year before you met her. I looked away. 1,000 memories suddenly felt different. The first time Victoria saw me, the way she was interested in my ideas, the way she asked questions about my father's company. At the time, I thought she was curious about me. Now, I wasn't sure. Did she know who I was? Daniel hesitated. That's the strange part. What? She didn't know your identity as the owner. I looked confused. Then why did my father write her name? Daniel continued. Because Victoria wasn't investigating the company. He placed another document in front of me. She was investigating you. I felt a cold wave move through my body. Why? Daniel shook his head. We don't know yet. I looked at the documents. A painful question appeared in my mind. Did Victoria ever love me? Or was I just part of a plan? That evening, I met Victoria at a quiet restaurant. She looked surprised when she saw me. Ethan, I sat across from her. Victoria. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The woman sitting in front of me looked different. Not because her appearance changed. Because I was finally seeing her without the illusion. You want to talk? Yes. She touched her glass. About what? I placed the documents on the table. Her face changed immediately. A small reaction. But enough. You know what these are? She didn't answer. Victoria. She looked down. I was hoping you would never find out. The words hurt, not because they shocked me, because they confirmed my fear. How long? She looked at me. What? How long did you know who I was? Silence. Then she whispered, before we got married. I felt like the entire restaurant disappeared. You knew? Yes. And you still married me? Her eyes filled with emotion. Ethan, listen to me. No. My voice remained calm. Answer one question. She waited. Did you love me? Victoria looked down. That silence was louder than any answer. I leaned back. I understand. Ethan. No, Victoria. I shook my head. I spent years wondering why you left. I looked at her. I thought it was because Adrian had more money. A painful smile appeared on my face. But the truth is worse. Her eyes filled with tears. You left because you knew exactly what I had. Victoria finally broke. I never wanted this to happen. Then why did it? She wiped her tears. Because I was afraid. Of what? My family. I frowned. What does your family have to do with this? She looked around, then lowered her voice. Before I met you, my father had a business relationship with Victor Blackwood, Adrian's father, the same man connected to my father's death. He forced me to get close to you. My heart sank. Forced you? Victoria nodded. He wanted information about your father's company. And you agreed? Her tears fell. At first. I looked away. The pain was overwhelming. At first. She nodded. But then I actually fell in love with you. I laughed quietly. A painful laugh. So, when did love disappear? It didn't. Then why did you leave? She looked at me. Because Adrian threatened you. I froze. What? Adrian discovered I was trying to protect you. My expression changed. What do you mean? Victoria leaned closer. Adrian knew I found evidence about your father's death. The world became silent. You found evidence? Yes. Where is it? She looked terrified. I hid it. Where? Before she could answer, the restaurant lights suddenly went out. People screamed. The emergency lights turned on, and when I looked back at Victoria, she was gone. I stood up immediately. Victoria, no response. I ran outside. Nothing. She disappeared. But on the table, something remained. A small envelope. My name was written on it. I opened it. Inside was a single photograph. My father, Victoria's father, Adrian's father, all standing together. But the date on the photograph made my blood freeze, because it was taken 2 months after my father supposedly died. Impossible, unless my father was alive after the accident. I rushed back to my office. Daniel was waiting. What happened? I placed the photograph on the desk. His face changed. Ethan, I nodded. I know. Daniel picked up the picture. This changes everything. I looked at him. No. I stared at the photograph. This proves something. What? My father wasn't killed because of company. A pause. He was killed because he knew something. That night, I opened my father's notebook again. A hidden page was folded inside. I carefully pulled it out. Only one sentence was written. Ethan, if you discover the truth, you will learn that the greatest betrayal never came from strangers. It came from the people who stood closest to you. Below it, there was another name. Someone I never expected. Someone who had been beside me for years. Someone I trusted completely. Daniel Brooks. I stepped back. My hands went cold. Daniel, my closest friend. My right-hand man. The person who helped me build everything. The person who knew every secret. I looked toward my office door. Because suddenly, I didn't know who was protecting me and who was destroying me. The empire returns to its true owner. I stared at the name written in my father's notebook. Daniel Brooks. For years, Daniel had been the one person I trusted without hesitation. When everyone saw a quiet businessman who stayed away from the spotlight, Daniel knew the truth. When I struggled after my father's death, Daniel stood beside me. When I secretly rebuilt Blackwood Global, Daniel handled impossible tasks. He was more than an employee. He was family. And now my father's final warning pointed directly at him. My mind refused to accept it. Daniel, I whisper his name. The same name I had trusted with every secret. The same man who knew where I was. What I owned. What I planned. Everything. I looked again at the notebook. Maybe my father wasn't accusing Daniel. Maybe he was warning me about something connected to him. There had to be another explanation. Because if Daniel betrayed me, then I had spent years building an empire while standing beside a stranger. The next morning, Daniel entered my office. He immediately noticed something was different. Ethan, I looked at him. Sit down. Daniel slowly sat. What happened? I placed the notebook on the desk. His expression changed. Only for a second, but I noticed. What is that? I watched him carefully. My father's notebook. Daniel became silent. You knew about this? No. The answer came too quickly. I leaned back. Daniel. Yes. Do you remember the night my father died? His face changed. Of course. You told me you arrived after the accident. Yes. Are you sure? Daniel looked confused. Ethan, what are you asking? I opened the notebook. I'm asking why my father wrote your name. The room became completely silent. Daniel stopped breathing for a moment. Then he looked away. That was all I needed to see. The truth was already speaking. Daniel, his eyes filled with sadness. I never wanted you to find out like this. My heart sank. Find out what? Daniel closed his eyes. Your father knew. Knew what? That I was involved. I stood up. What does that mean? Daniel looked at me. I didn't betray your father. Then explain. He took a deep breath. I betrayed his trust. The anger inside me grew. You have 5 minutes. Daniel nodded. Your father discovered Victor Blackwood was planning to take control of the company. I know that part. No, Ethan, you don't know everything. Daniel looked down. Your father knew Adrian wasn't the real threat. I froze. Then who was... Daniel looked at me. Your own grandfather. I stared at him. What? Daniel continued. Your grandfather created the original company. But after years of losing control, he became obsessed with getting power back. That makes no sense. Your father wanted to change the company. He wanted to build something honest. Daniel paused. But Powerful people don't always accept losing control. I slowly sat down. So my father's death was planned. My hands tightened. By my grandfather? Daniel shook his head. No. A pause. Your grandfather started it. Then who finished it? Daniel looked directly into my eyes. Victor Blackwood. The truth was finally coming together. Victor wanted my father's company. Adrian wanted my father's reputation. Victoria was trapped between family pressure and her feelings. And Daniel was hiding something. But why? Why didn't you tell me? Daniel looked broken. Because your father made me promise. A promise? He told me if anything happened to him, I had to protect you. I laughed bitterly. By lying to me? No. Daniel's voice cracked. By keeping you alive. I stopped. What? Daniel opened his jacket. He pulled out an old envelope. Inside was a letter. My father's handwriting. I read the first line. Ethan, if you are reading this, Daniel has finally decided you are strong enough to know the truth. My hands trembled. I continued reading. Daniel was never your enemy. He was a shield I left behind. I looked at Daniel. He lowered his head. I wanted to tell you. Then why didn't you? Because your father knew the people who wanted your empire would come after anyone close to you. He paused. And he was right. Suddenly, my phone rang. A known number. I answered. A familiar voice appeared. Adrian. Ethan. My expression hardened. What do you want? You finally know. Know what? The truth. I looked at Daniel. You knew. Adrian laughed. You still don't understand. What? You think you discovered secret. A pause. But the truth is, I allowed you to discover it. My eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I wanted you distracted. Why? Because while you were chasing the past. His voice became colder. I was taking your future. I immediately looked at Daniel. What did you do? Daniel stood. Ethan, my phone showed an alert. Emergency board vote scheduled. I opened the notification. The board was voting to remove me permanently. Adrian continued. By tomorrow morning, Blackwood Global will no longer belong to you. I smiled. You really believe that? Yes. You forgot something. What? I looked at Daniel, then at the company files. You built your entire plan using information from my empire. Silence. Every contract. Every weakness. Every strategy. I smiled. And you forgot who created the system you're trying to destroy. Adrian's voice became nervous. What are you saying? I'm saying. I walked toward the window, overlooking New York. You never understood my greatest strength. What is that? I don't need people to know my name. A pause. But when the truth comes out, I looked at the city. They will remember it. The next morning, the biggest shareholder meeting in Blackwood global history began. Every news channel was outside. Every investor was watching. Everyone expected Adrian Blackwood to become the permanent owner. Everyone expected Ethan Carter to disappear. But when the doors opened, I walked inside, not as a hidden owner, not as a silent businessman, but as a founder. The room became silent. Adrian looked shocked. You actually came. I smiled. You thought I wouldn't? You have no control anymore. I placed a folder on the table. Actually, I pushed it toward him. You lost control 3 minutes ago. Adrian opened it. His face changed. What is this? Proof. Proof of what? That every illegal action you took was recorded. The room erupted. Investors looked shocked. Adrian's confidence disappeared. You planned this? I shook my head. No. I looked at him. You did. Then Victoria entered. Everyone turned. Adrian looked angry. What are you doing here? Victoria looked at him. I'm ending this. She placed another folder on the table. My evidence. Adrian's face turned pale. You betrayed me? Victoria looked at him. No. She looked at me. I finally stopped betraying myself. Inside the folder were the documents proving Adrian and Victor Blackwood's years of manipulation. The truth was finally exposed. The empire, the lies, the betrayal, everything. Months later, Blackwood Global changed forever. I stepped away from the spotlight again. But this time, not because I was hiding, because I no longer needed approval. Adrian faced legal consequences for his actions. Victoria spent months trying to repair the damage she caused. I never hated her, because hatred keeps people connected, and I had finally learned how to let go. One evening, Victoria came to my office. I don't expect forgiveness. I looked at her. Good. She looked surprised. Good. Yes. Why? Because forgiveness isn't something you demand. She nodded. I really did love you. I looked outside. I believe you, but love without honesty destroys everything. Victoria lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. I nodded. I know. And for the first time, there was peace between us. A year later, I stood in the same building where my life had fallen apart. Blackwood Tower. The place where my wife left me. The place where I discovered betrayal. The place where I finally found myself. People often think losing everything is the end. But sometimes, losing everything is a moment you discover what truly belongs to you. I lost a marriage. I lost trust. I lost the illusion that everyone around me was loyal. But I gained something more valuable. Clarity. Because the greatest victory isn't proving your enemies wrong. It's becoming someone who no longer needs them to be right. I looked at the city below. The same city that once saw me as nobody. The same city that never knew my name. And I smiled, because now everyone knew the truth. The billionaire empire they admired was never built by the man standing on the stage. It was built by the man who stayed silent, the man they betrayed, the man they underestimated. Ethan Carter.